Can you read this letter for me? It's very important. The maid's toddler's wish shattered the billionaire's soul. Marcus Chin stood in his penthouse office, the Manhattan skyline glittering beneath him like a sea of diamonds. At 33, he had everything the world said should make him happy: a billion-dollar tech empire, properties on 3 continents, and a name that commanded respect in boardrooms from New York to Singapore. Yet as he stared at his reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows, he saw only the hollow eyes of a man who'd traded his heart for a stock portfolio. The sound of small footsteps broke his reverie. He turned sharply, unused to interruptions in his private sanctuary. Standing in the doorway was little Emma Martinez, her dark curls bouncing as she clutched a wrinkled envelope in her tiny hands. Her brown eyes, wide and earnest, locked onto his with an intensity that made his breath catch. "Mr. Chen?" Her voice was barely above a whisper, trembling with a mixture of fear and determination that seemed far too mature for a 3-year-old. Marcus's jaw tightened. How had she gotten past security? More importantly, where was her mother, Maria, his housekeeper of 6 months? He'd hired her despite his general policy of minimal household staff. Something about her quiet dignity and desperate need for the position had moved him, though he never admitted it aloud. "Emma, you shouldn't be up here," he said, his voice coming out harsher than intended. "Where's your mother?" The little girl flinched, and immediately Marcus felt a pang of guilt. Children were foreign territory to him. He built his empire by understanding algorithms and market trends, not the emotional landscape of a toddler's heart. "Mama's sleeping," Emma said, taking a tentative step forward. "She's very tired lately. She sleeps a lot." The child's matter-of-fact tone carried an undercurrent of worry that made Marcus's instincts prickle with concern. He'd noticed Maria moving more slowly recently, her usual efficiency marred by moments where she'd pause, hand pressed to her side, breathing carefully. He'd assumed she was simply tired from working too hard, perhaps caring for Emma at night. He'd even considered telling her to take some time off, but the words had never materialized, typical of his inability to express anything resembling genuine human concern. "Emma, it's late. You should be in bed," he said, moderating his tone this time. "I know," she said solemnly, "but I need your help. Please, Mr. Chen." She held up the envelope with both hands, like an offering. "Can you read this letter for me? It's very important." Something in her earnestness made it impossible to refuse. Marcus found himself crossing the room and kneeling down to her level. When had he last knelt for anything other than to tie a shoelace, and accepting the crumpled envelope? The paper was worn soft, as if it had been handled many times. "What is this?" he asked gently. "It's from Mama," Emma said. "She wrote it a long time ago before we came here. She reads it to me sometimes when she's sad, but tonight she's too tired and Her voice cracked, and tears welled in her eyes. "I wanted to hear it, but I can't read yet. And it's very important because it tells me about my papa." Marcus's heart constricted. In 6 months, Maria had never mentioned Emma's father, and he'd never asked. Privacy was a currency he valued highly, both giving and receiving it. But now, looking at this small child with her father's letter clutched in her hands, he realized that sometimes walls weren't protection, they were prisons. "All right," he said softly. "Let's read it together." He led Emma to the leather sofa near his desk, and she climbed up beside him, settling so close that her small body pressed against his side. The gesture of trust was overwhelming. When had anyone trusted him like this, without agenda or calculation? With careful fingers, Marcus opened the envelope and withdrew a single sheet of lined paper, the handwriting uneven but heartfelt. As he began to read aloud, he felt Emma's hand slip into his. "My dearest Emma," the letter began, and Marcus's voice caught momentarily before he continued. "If you're reading this, then you're old enough to start understanding, even if you're still very small. I want you to know that you were made from love, the purest kind. Your mama and I, We didn't have much time together, but every moment was precious. Marcus paused, glancing at Emma. She was staring straight ahead, listening with an intensity that was almost painful to witness. I got sick, mi amor, before you were even born. The doctors said I wouldn't get to meet you, but I fought with everything I had to hold on. And I did. I got to hold you for 3 beautiful days. I got to count your fingers and toes, to see your mama's eyes looking back at me from your perfect little face. A tear rolled down Emma's cheek, and Marcus felt something crack open in his chest, something he'd kept locked away since his own father's death when he was 12, the event that had transformed him from a dreaming boy into a calculating machine. I want you to know that leaving you wasn't a choice, Marcus continued, his own voice growing thick. If I could have stayed, I would have given up everything, every dream, every tomorrow, just to watch you grow. But since I can't be there, I'm writing you this letter to tell you the most important things. The letter went on, a father's desperate attempt to compress a lifetime of guidance into a single page. Be kind, it said. Be brave. Know that you are loved beyond measure. Take care of your mama. She's the strongest person I've ever known, even when she's tired, even when she's scared. And remember that love doesn't end, not ever. I'll be watching over you, mi estrelita, my little star, every day of your life. By the time Marcus finished reading, both he and Emma were crying. She threw her arms around his neck, her small body shaking with sobs, and he found himself holding her tight. This child who was virtually a stranger, yet felt somehow essential in this moment. He loved you very much, Marcus whispered into her hair. Your papa loved you so much. I miss him, Emma sobbed, even though I don't remember him. Is that silly? No, Marcus said firmly, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. It's not silly at all. Love doesn't need memory to be real. They sat like that for a long time, this broken billionaire and this grieving child, finding unexpected comfort in each other's arms. And for the first time in 21 years, since the day he'd stood dry-eyed at his father's funeral and vowed never to be vulnerable again, Marcus Chin allowed himself to fully feel. When Emma finally pulled back, she looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes. Thank you for reading it to me, she said. Mama says my papa was a good man. She says I have his brave heart. I'm sure you do, Marcus said, brushing a curl from her forehead with a tenderness that shocked him. And your mama is right. But Emma, we should check on her now. You said she's very tired. A shadow crossed Emma's face. She's always tired now. And sometimes she cries when she thinks I'm not looking. Mr. Chin, is Mama sick like Papa was? The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. Suddenly, Maria's recent lethargy, her careful movements, the way she'd lost weight despite his kitchen being fully stocked, it all coalesced into a terrifying possibility he'd been too self-absorbed to see. Let's go check on her, he said, standing and offering his hand to Emma. As they walked together down the hallway toward the staff quarters, a part of his own home he rarely visited, Marcus felt the first stirrings of a fear that had nothing to do with market crashes or hostile takeovers. This was the fear of caring, of connection, of being too late to matter. The door to Maria's room was ajar, and inside, Marcus could see her lying on the bed, her breathing shallow and labored. Even in sleep, pain etched lines across her face. And in that moment, as Emma's hand tightened around his, Marcus Chin made a decision that would change all their lives forever. Whatever was wrong, whatever it took, he would fix this. Not because he was a billionaire who solved problems with money, but because somewhere between that first word of the letter and this moment, these two people had become important to him in a way nothing else had in over 2 decades. He just hoped he wasn't too late. The emergency room at Mount Sinai Hospital was a fluorescent-lit purgatory where time seemed to move in strange rhythms, simultaneously too fast and achingly slow. Marcus sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair, Emma curled in his lap, finally asleep after hours of tearful worry. His $1,000 suit was wrinkled, his tie long since abandoned, but he couldn't have cared less about his appearance. All that mattered was beyond those double doors, where Maria was undergoing test after test. When he'd first checked on her in her room, he'd found her barely conscious, burning with fever. The ambulance ride had been a blur of sirens and Emma's terrified crying. He'd held them both in the back of the vehicle, making promises he wasn't sure he could keep, that everything would be okay, that Maria would be fine, that he would take care of them. Mr. Chen? A tired-looking doctor approached, clipboard in hand. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, her badge red. She was young but carried herself with the weary confidence of someone who delivered too much bad news. Marcus gently shifted Emma to the chair beside him, careful not to wake her, and stood. "How is she?" Dr. Mitchell gestured for him to follow her to a quieter corner of the waiting room. Her expression alone told him this wasn't good news. "Your wife has stage 3 ovarian cancer," she began. "She's not." Marcus started to correct her, then stopped. What did it matter? "How bad is it?"
"Advanced."
"The cancer has spread beyond her ovaries to her abdomen. From what she's told us, she's been experiencing symptoms for months, but didn't seek treatment." Dr. Mitchell's voice held no judgment, only a deep sadness. She said she couldn't afford to miss work, couldn't afford the medical bills, couldn't risk losing her job and the housing that came with it. Marcus felt like he'd been punched in the gut. Maria had been dying quietly in his home, too afraid to ask for help because she needed the paycheck. While he'd been obsessing over quarterly earnings and acquisition deals, a woman under his own roof had been making impossible choices between her health and her child's security. "What are her options?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "With aggressive treatment, chemotherapy, possible surgery, we might be able to extend her life significantly, possibly even achieve remission. But I have to be honest with you. It will be difficult, expensive, and there are no guarantees. Without treatment." Dr. Mitchell paused, choosing her words carefully. "She has perhaps 6 months, maybe less." 6 months. Emma would lose her mother the same way she'd lost her father. The cruelty of it made Marcus want to put his fist through the wall. "Start treatment immediately," he said. "Whatever she needs. The best specialists, the best facility. Money is not a concern." Dr. Mitchell studied him for a moment. "Mr. Chen, I don't mean to pry into your personal business, but I have to ask, what is your relationship to Maria? I need to understand who has the authority to make medical decisions if she becomes unable to do so herself. She listed you as her employer, but Marcus struggled for words. What was he to Maria? An employer who'd barely spoken to her beyond pleasantries? A man who'd been so wrapped in his own emotional isolation that he'd failed to notice her suffering? "I'm going to be whatever she and Emma need me to be. Can I see her?" In the recovery room, Maria looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, IVs running into her arms, monitors beeping steadily. Her eyes were closed, her face peaceful in a way it hadn't been in weeks. For the first time, Marcus really looked at her. Not as the efficient woman who kept his household running, but as a person. She was 28, beautiful even now in her exhaustion, with delicate features and thick dark hair spread across the pillow. She had laugh lines around her eyes that suggested she'd once smiled more than he'd ever seen. Who was she? What dreams had she harbored before cancer, and single motherhood had narrowed her world to mere survival? Her eyes fluttered open, focusing on him with difficulty. "Mr. Chen? Emma, where's?" "She's safe. She's asleep in the waiting room," Marcus said quickly, pulling a chair close to her bedside. "Maria, why didn't you tell me you were sick?" Tears slipped from the corners of her eyes. "I couldn't. I needed this job. Emma needs a home, food, stability. If you knew I was sick, you might have let me go, and I can't. I can't leave her with nothing." The fact that she thought so little of him, or perhaps, more accurately, that he'd given her no reason to think better, cut deeply. "Maria, I'm going to make sure you get the treatment you need. The best doctors, everything." She shook her head weakly. "I can't afford." I can, he said firmly. And I'm going to. This isn't negotiable. You're going to fight this, and I'm going to make sure you have every resource possible to win.
Why?
The question was simple, but profound. Why would you do this for us? Marcus thought of Emma's small hand in his, of her father's letter, of the way his carefully constructed walls had crumbled in the space of a few hours. Because it's the right thing to do. And because. He paused, searching for truth. Because I've spent 20 years not caring about anyone, and I'm tired of it. I'm tired of being alone in a crowded room. I'm tired of measuring everything in dollars and returns on investment. You and Emma, you've reminded me that some things matter more than money. Maria reached out with a trembling hand, and Marcus took it, holding it gently. I'm scared, she whispered. I know, he said. I am too. But you're not alone in this. Neither of you are alone anymore. Over the next 3 days, while Maria began her first round of chemotherapy, Marcus transformed into someone he barely recognized. He cleared his schedule, delegating responsibilities to his executive team with instructions not to disturb him unless the company was literally on fire. He converted one of his penthouse guest suites into a proper bedroom for Emma, complete with toys, books, and a nightlight shaped like stars, because she was her father's little star, and she deserved to be reminded of that. He hired a pediatric counselor to help Emma process her mother's illness, and sat in on the sessions himself, learning how to talk to a grieving, frightened child. He discovered that Emma loved strawberries but hated bananas, that she could recite the entire plot of Frozen from memory, and that she had nightmares about her mother disappearing like her father had. One evening, as he tucked Emma into bed, another first in his carefully controlled life, she looked up at him with those serious brown eyes. Mr. Chin, are you going to be my family now? The question was so direct, so vulnerable, that Marcus felt his throat tighten. Would you like me to be? Emma nodded solemnly. Mama says families take care of each other. You're taking care of us, so I think that makes you family. But you can call me Emma instead of Emma Martinez if you want. And I can call you Marcus instead of Mr. Chin. How about Uncle Marcus? He suggested, the word feeling strange but right on his tongue. Emma's face lit up with the first genuine smile he'd seen from her since that night in his office. Uncle Marcus. I like that. Uncle Marcus, will you read me Papa's letter again? So he did, his voice growing steadier with each reading, the words becoming familiar. And afterward, he told Emma about his own father, a kind man who'd worked 2 jobs to put Marcus through college, who died of a heart attack the week before Marcus's high school graduation. He told her about the guilt of success, how every achievement felt hollow because the man he'd wanted most to impress wasn't there to see it. But you know what? Marcus said, brushing a curl from Emma's forehead. I think our papas would be proud of us now. Mine would be proud that I'm finally learning what really matters. And yours would be proud that you're being so brave while your mama gets better. Do you really think she'll get better? Emma asked, her voice small. Marcus wanted to promise her the world, to guarantee a happy ending. But he'd learned enough in the past few days to know that false hope was a cruelty. I think she's going to fight with everything she has. And we're going to fight right alongside her. That's what family does. The next morning, Marcus received a call from Maria's oncologist, Dr. Patricia Chun, no relation. She'd joked when they'd met. She wanted to discuss treatment options and long-term prognosis. As Marcus settled into the uncomfortable chair in her office, he found himself praying for the first time since his father's death, not to any specific god, but to the universe itself. Please, he thought, please let this story have a different ending. Let love be enough this time. 6 weeks into treatment, Maria sat in Marcus's living room, no longer the staff quarters, but the main penthouse space he'd insisted she move into, staring at the clumps of hair in her hands. The chemotherapy was brutal, attacking the cancer but devastating everything else in its wake. She'd lost 20 pounds, her skin had taken on a grayish pallor, and now her Her beautiful thick hair that Emma loved to braid was falling out in patches. "Mama?" Emma's voice came from the doorway, tentative and frightened. Maria quickly tried to hide the hair, forcing a smile. "It's okay, mi amor. It's just... Your hair is falling out because of the medicine," Emma said matter-of-factly. She'd been attending the counseling sessions Marcus arranged, learning about cancer in age-appropriate terms. "Dr. Laura says it means the medicine is working hard to make you better." "That's right," Maria said, but her voice cracked. She was trying so hard to be strong, but every day felt like a battle. She wasn't sure she could win. The nausea was constant, the fatigue overwhelming. Some mornings she woke up and for a blissful moment forgot she was sick, and then reality would crash back in. Emma crossed the room and climbed into her mother's lap, wrapping her small arms around Maria's neck. "It's okay to be sad, Mama. Uncle Marcus says brave people are sad sometimes too." Maria closed her eyes, holding her daughter close. Uncle Marcus. In 6 weeks, Marcus Chen had become more involved in their lives than she'd ever imagined possible. He'd attended every doctor's appointment, asked questions she was too exhausted to think of, researched treatment protocols late into the night. He'd learned to French braid Emma's hair, watching YouTube tutorials in his office like he was preparing for a board presentation. He'd taken Emma to her first Broadway show, to Central Park, to the Museum of Natural History, filling her days with wonder while Maria fought for her life. And he'd done something even more remarkable. He'd started to heal himself. The cold, distant employer she'd known for 6 months was transforming into someone warm, engaged, present. She'd catch him laughing at Emma's jokes, or see him with tears in his eyes when he thought no one was looking. The fortress around his heart was crumbling, brick by brick. "Where is Uncle Marcus?" Emma asked. "He had a meeting," Maria said. "He'll be back soon." In fact, Marcus was across town in his corporate office for the first time in weeks, facing down his board of directors. His prolonged absence hadn't gone unnoticed, and there were concerns about his commitment to the company. "Marcus, we understand you're dealing with a personal situation," Richard Ashford, the lead board member, said carefully. "But Chen Technologies needs your leadership. The Harrison merger alone requires your direct involvement." Marcus looked around the table at these men and women he'd worked with for years. They'd helped him build an empire, but not one of them had asked how he was doing, what the personal situation entailed, whether he needed support. To them, he was an asset, a resource to be optimized. "The Harrison merger will proceed without issue," Marcus said calmly. "Jennifer has been handling it brilliantly." He nodded to his CFO, who looked surprised and pleased by the acknowledgement. "What I'm dealing with is more than a situation. I'm helping someone fight for her life and caring for her 3-year-old daughter." "That's very noble," Richard said, in a tone that suggested it was anything but. "However, your contract." "My contract makes me CEO and majority shareholder," Marcus interrupted. "Which means I have both the authority and the responsibility to determine how I spend my time. Chen Technologies is strong because I built it on innovation and calculated risk. Well, I'm making another calculated investment now, in people who matter to me." "Marcus," another board member interjected, "we're not trying to be heartless. But you've never let personal matters interfere with business before. What's changed?" Marcus thought about Emma reading him her favorite bedtime story last night, insisting on doing all the voices. He thought about Maria's hand in his during her last chemo session, her grip tightening during the worst waves of nausea. He thought about the man he'd been 6 weeks ago, successful, wealthy, and utterly alone. "I changed," he said simply. "I realized I was building an empire, but forgetting to build a life. You want to know the truth? Chen Technologies could disappear tomorrow, and in 100 years, no one would remember or care. But if I help save Maria's life, if I give Emma the childhood her father wanted her to have, if I become the kind of man my own father hoped I'd be, that matters. That's legacy." The room fell silent. Finally, Richard spoke, his voice softer. How is she? The woman you're helping? Fighting, Marcus said. Some days are better than others. Yesterday, she managed to eat a full meal for the first time in 2 weeks. Today she's losing her hair and can barely get out of bed. It's brutal and uncertain and terrifying. And it's also shown me more about courage and love than 33 years of safe, controlled living ever did. To his surprise, Richard's eyes grew misty. My wife had breast cancer 15 years ago. She beat it, but those treatment months, they were the hardest of our lives. Marcus, I apologize. I should have asked, should have offered support instead of criticism. Others around the table nodded, sharing their own stories of illness, loss, caregiving. For the first time, Marcus saw these people not as chess pieces in his business strategy, but as human beings with their own struggles and sorrows. Take the time you need, Richard said firmly. We'll manage. And Marcus? You're doing the right thing. When Marcus returned to the penthouse that evening, he found Maria asleep on the couch, a scarf covering her now bare head. Emma was curled against her mother's side, also sleeping, her small hand clutching Maria's. The scene was so tender, so perfect in its imperfection, that Marcus stood frozen in the doorway, simply watching. This was what he'd been missing. Not just love, but the messy, complicated, beautiful reality of caring deeply about other people. The fear of loss that came with attachment, yes, but also the profound joy of matching to someone beyond what you could provide or achieve. Uncle Marcus? Emma stirred, blinking sleepily. You're home. Home. Not back, but home. When had this become home? Not just a place he slept, but a place he belonged. I'm home, he confirmed, crossing to sit on the floor beside the couch, so he was eye level with her. How's Mama doing? Tired, Emma whispered. But she ate soup, a whole bowl, and she said it tasted good, even though she usually says everything tastes like metal. That's wonderful progress, Marcus said, reaching out to brush a curl from Emma's face, a gesture that had become second nature. Emma regarded him with those two wise eyes. Uncle Marcus, if Mama gets all better, will we have to leave? Will you not want to be our family anymore? The question punched through him. Of course Emma would worry about this. Her whole short life had been defined by loss and instability. Emma, look at me. She did, her eyes shining with unshed tears. You and your Mama aren't going anywhere, Marcus said firmly. Whether she gets better tomorrow or it takes months or years, you're staying right here. And even when she is better, you're still my family. I'm not going to stop being Uncle Marcus. I'm not going to stop taking you to see Broadway shows or reading your papa's letter when you need to hear it. Families don't stop being families just because things get easier. Promise, Emma whispered. I promise, Marcus said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. Cross my heart. Emma launched herself into his arms, nearly toppling him backward. He caught her, holding her tight, and felt Maria's hand come to rest on his shoulder. He looked up to find her awake, tears streaming down her face. Thank you, she mouthed silently. But Marcus shook his head. They had it backward. They were the ones who'd given him a gift beyond measure, the chance to be human again, to feel again, to matter in ways that had nothing to do with net worth and everything to do with genuine connection. That night, after Emma was tucked into bed, Marcus and Maria sat together on the balcony overlooking the city. She was wrapped in blankets despite the warm September air, her body's temperature regulation thrown off by the chemo. I'm scared I'm not going to make it, Maria said quietly. The oncologist says the tumors are shrinking, but what if they come back? What if this doesn't work? Marcus, what's going to happen to Emma? You're going to make it, Marcus said, taking her hand. You're going to fight this thing and win because you're the strongest person I've ever met. But Maria, if you're asking me to promise that I'll take care of Emma no matter what, yes. I promise. She'll never want for anything, and more importantly, she'll never doubt that she's loved. You've changed our lives, Maria said, her voice breaking. I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to thank me, Marcus said. You saved my life too. You just did it in a different way. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights. Two people who'd been strangers 8 weeks ago now bound together by circumstance and choice, by crisis and care. The road ahead was uncertain. Cancer didn't offer guarantees. But for the first time in years, Marcus understood that uncertainty wasn't something to be eliminated through control and calculation. Sometimes you just had to have faith in love, in resilience, in the possibility of healing. Sometimes you just had to hold someone's hand and refuse to let go, no matter how dark the night became. 3 months into treatment, Maria stood in front of the bathroom mirror, studying her reflection. She'd lost so much weight that her clothes hung loose, and the scarf covering her bald head was a constant reminder of the war being waged inside her body. But for the first time in weeks, she saw something else in the mirror: hope. The latest scans had shown significant tumor shrinkage. Dr. Chen had used words like encouraging and promising, her professional optimism barely masking genuine excitement. It wasn't remission yet, but it was progress. Tangible, measurable progress that made Maria dare to imagine a future beyond the next treatment cycle. Mama. Emma's voice rang through the penthouse. Uncle Marcus made pancakes. Real ones, not the burnt ones. Maria smiled. Marcus's cooking journey had been an adventure. The brilliant CEO who could negotiate multi-million-dollar deals had initially been defeated by scrambled eggs. But he persisted with the same determination he applied to everything, and now he could produce a decent breakfast, even if the kitchen occasionally looked like a war zone afterward. She found them in the kitchen, Emma perched on the counter in her pajamas, watching Marcus flip pancakes with intense concentration. He'd traded his tailored suits for jeans and a casual shirt on weekends, and his hair was slightly mussed from sleep. He looked younger like this, more relaxed, more like the man he might have been if grief and ambition hadn't hardened him so young. Good morning, Maria said, and both of them turned, their faces lighting up at the sight of her. You're up, Marcus said, genuine delight in his voice. How are you feeling? Better, Maria said, and realized it was true. The nausea that had been her constant companion was more manageable today. Good enough to steal a pancake. They're chocolate chip, Emma announced proudly. I helped Uncle Marcus make them. I cracked 3 whole eggs and only got a little bit of shell in the bowl. Marcus caught Maria's eye, his expression fond and exasperated. We discussed how a little bit is a generous description. The domesticity of it all was still startling to Maria. She'd spent so many years alone, managing everything single-handedly: work, childcare, bills, grief. The idea that someone else could share the load, could be there for the mundane moments as much as the crisis ones, was still almost too good to believe. After breakfast, while Emma watched her favorite cartoon, Marcus and Maria sat at the dining table with laptops and papers spread between them. He'd been teaching her about investing, helping her understand how to manage the college fund he'd set up for Emma. You don't have to do this, Maria protested for the 100th time. The college fund, I mean, it's too much. Emma deserves every opportunity, Marcus said firmly. And you deserve peace of mind. Besides, I've learned more from teaching you about portfolio diversification than from the last 10 board meetings. You ask better questions than most of my analysts. Maria blushed. Before cancer, before Marcus, she'd been taking online business courses late at night, dreaming of maybe, someday, starting her own cleaning company. Those dreams had felt impossibly distant when she was just trying to survive each day. But Marcus had revived them, encouraging her, telling her she had a mind for business and shouldn't waste it. I've been thinking, Marcus said carefully. When you're well enough, and you will be, what if we started that cleaning business you mentioned? I could provide startup capital and you'd run it. Hire other women in situations like yours was, give them good wages and benefits, create something meaningful. Maria stared at him. Marcus, I can't take more from you. You've already. I'm not offering charity, he interrupted. I'm proposing an investment. I believe you'd build something successful and, yes, profitable. But more than that, I think you'd build something that matters. You understand what it's like to work hard and still struggle, to need help but be too proud or too scared to ask for it. That insight is valuable. Tears welled in Maria's eyes. She cried so easily these days, the chemotherapy having stripped away her emotional armor along with her hair. Why do you believe in me so much? Marcus reached across the table, taking her hand. His thumb brushed across her knuckles, a gesture that had become familiar and precious. Because I see you, Maria. Not just the housekeeper I hired, but the woman who worked while dying because she loved her daughter that much. The woman who reads her late husband's letter to Emma with such tenderness, keeping his memory alive. The woman who fights through nausea and exhaustion to show up for treatment because giving up isn't in your vocabulary. How could I not believe in you? The moment stretched between them, charged with something neither of them had acknowledged aloud. Somewhere along the way, gratitude and companionship had deepened into something more. Maria saw it in the way Marcus looked at her, not with pity, but with admiration and affection and a tenderness that made her heart ache. She felt it in the way her pulse quickened when he entered a room, in the way his opinion mattered more than it probably should. But the timing was all wrong. She was sick, vulnerable, dependent on him. Any feelings between them were tangled up with crisis and caretaking. How could she trust what was real and what was just the intensity of the situation? Uncle Marcus. Emma bounded into the room. Can we go to the park? Please? It's so sunny. Marcus looked to Maria questioningly. Are you up for it? The old Maria would have said no, would have insisted they go without her, would have hidden in bed with her exhaustion and nausea. But the new Maria, the one slowly learning to accept help and love, said, yes. Let's all go. Central Park was brilliant with autumn colors, the October air crisp and clean. Emma raced ahead on the path, her laughter echoing back to them as Marcus and Maria walked slowly behind. He'd insisted on bringing a wheelchair, just in case she got too tired, and now he pushed the empty chair with one hand while offering Maria his arm with the other. Thank you for this, Maria said, watching Emma chase falling leaves. For all of it. I know I say it too much, but you don't say it enough, Marcus countered. Thank you for letting me be part of your lives. Thank you for teaching me what actually matters. Thank you for Emma's laugh, for terrible pancakes on Sunday mornings, for reminding me that being alive is different from just existing. They found a bench overlooking the lake, and Emma brought them treasures. Interesting leaves, smooth pebbles, a feather that might have been from a hawk. Each item was presented like precious gold, and Marcus treated them with appropriate reverence, pocketing the best specimens and promising to help Emma make a collection. Mama, Emma said suddenly, climbing into Maria's lap. I'm really glad you're getting better. Me too, baby, Maria said, kissing the top of her daughter's head. And I'm glad Uncle Marcus is here, Emma continued. Before, it was just you and me, and that was good. But now it's 3 of us, and that's better. Like a triangle, Mama, me, and Uncle Marcus. Triangles are strong. Miss Sarah told us that in preschool. Marcus and Maria exchanged glances over Emma's head, both of them struck by the simple wisdom of a 3-year-old's geometry. Yes, Marcus said softly. Triangles are very strong. That evening, after Emma was asleep, Maria found Marcus on the balcony again, their usual spot for late-night conversations. He'd become the keeper of her fears and hopes, the person she could tell anything. She'd shared stories of her late husband, how they'd met at a community college, how he'd proposed with a ring from a pawn shop, how those 3 days with newborn Emma had been both the happiest and most heartbreaking of their lives. In turn, Marcus had opened up about his own losses and regrets. His father's death, yes, but also the relationships he'd sabotaged, the friends he'd pushed away, The years he'd wasted building wealth while neglecting everything that made wealth worthwhile. Tonight, Maria had something important to say. Marcus, I need you to know, when I'm better, Emma and I will find our own place. You've done so much for us, but we can't stay here forever. It's not fair to you. Marcus turned to her, his expression intense. What if I don't want you to leave? Marcus. Maria's heart hammered in her chest. I know the timing is complicated, he said quickly. I know you're still healing, and I'm not trying to pressure you into anything. But Maria, these past few months, having you and Emma here, it's not charity or obligation. This has become home because you're here. You've made me remember how to laugh, how to play, how to care about someone else's happiness more than my own. I don't want this to end when you're in remission. I don't either, Maria admitted, the words tumbling out. But I'm scared, Marcus. I'm scared that what we're feeling is just because of the circumstances. You're my hero, the man who saved my life. How do I know what I feel is real and not just gratitude? And what if the cancer comes back? What if I can't give you the future you deserve? Marcus took both her hands in his. The cancer might come back. You might have years of treatment ahead. But that doesn't change how I feel. As for gratitude versus love, Maria, I'm grateful to you too. You saved me from a life of emotional isolation. So maybe we're both grateful, and maybe that's okay. Maybe that's where the best relationships start. Two people who see each other clearly and choose each other anyway. Is that what you want? Maria whispered. To choose us? Even with all the uncertainty. Every single day, Marcus said. For as long as you'll let me. Maria felt tears streaming down her face again, but these were different. Tears of joy, of relief, of hope for a future she'd thought was impossible. I want that too. So much. But can we take it slow? Can we just be us for a while? No pressure, no expectations, just seeing where this goes. Slow is perfect, Marcus said, reaching up to cup her face gently. We have time, Maria. Thanks to the treatment working, we have time. He was right. The latest scans had shown continued improvement. Dr. Chin was cautiously optimistic that Maria might achieve remission within the next few months. The road ahead was still uncertain. There would be more treatments, more scans, the constant fear of recurrence. But for the first time, the future looked brighter than the past. Uncle Marcus? Mama? Emma's sleepy voice came from the balcony doorway. I had a bad dream. They both turned, opening their arms simultaneously. Emma padded over and climbed onto the outdoor sofa between them, snuggling into their warmth. Want to tell us about it? Maria asked softly. I dreamed you went away like Papa did, Emma said to her mother. Then she turned to Marcus. And you went back to being sad and alone before we came. We're not going anywhere, Marcus promised, wrapping an arm around both of them. We're right here, all three of us. Our triangle, remember? Strong and steady. Emma yawned, already half asleep again. Good. 'Cause I love our triangle. I love you, Mama. I love you, Uncle Marcus. We love you too, they said in unison, and as Emma drifted back to sleep between them, Maria and Marcus's eyes met over her head. This was the victory that mattered, not the shrinking tumors or the promising scans, but this moment of peace and love and family. Cancer had brought them together, but it was choice that would keep them together. The choice to believe in each other, to risk loving despite the possibility of loss, to build something beautiful from the broken pieces of their past. The word remission had a sound like church bells, like champagne bubbles, like Emma's laughter echoing through the penthouse. Dr. Chun had delivered the news with professional composure, but Maria could see the genuine joy in her eyes. After 8 grueling months of chemotherapy, radiation, and 3 surgeries, the scans showed no evidence of disease. No evidence of disease didn't mean cured. Maria had learned the language of cancer well enough to know that. She'd need regular monitoring, would live with the sword of Damocles hanging over her head for years, perhaps forever. But today, this moment, she was cancer-free. Marcus had been with her for the appointment, as he'd been for all of them. When the doctor left the room to give them privacy, Maria turned to him and broke down completely, not from fear this time, but from overwhelming relief. She'd survived. She'd get to watch Emma grow up. She'd get to see graduations and first dates, and all the ordinary miracles she'd thought cancer might steal. "You did it," Marcus whispered into her hair as he held her. "You fought and you won." "We won," Maria corrected, pulling back to look at him. "I couldn't have done this without you." Over the past months, as Maria had grown stronger and her hair had started growing back in soft, dark curls, their relationship had evolved. They'd kept their promise to take things slow, but slow didn't mean stagnant. There had been late-night conversations about everything from philosophy to favorite childhood memories. There had been family movie nights with Emma between them and quiet dinners after she went to bed. There had been held hands and lingering glances and a kiss under the stars one night that had felt like coming home. They hadn't defined what they were to each other. Partners seemed too clinical, boyfriend and girlfriend too juvenile for what they'd been through together. They were just Marcus and Maria, bound by something deeper than words could capture. Now, in the wake of the remission news, Maria felt something shift. The crisis that had brought them together was ending. The question was, what came next? "Let's go tell Emma," Marcus said, his face lit with a smile that still had the power to steal Maria's breath. They found her at home with Mrs. Patterson, the kind older woman Marcus had hired as a part-time nanny to help during treatment days. Emma was coloring at the dining table, her tongue sticking out in concentration as she stayed inside the lines of a princess's dress. "Emma, baby, we have good news," Maria said, kneeling beside her daughter's chair. Emma looked up, her eyes wide. At 4 now, she'd had a birthday mid-treatment, celebrated with a small party that Marcus had orchestrated with touching attention to detail. She was more perceptive than ever. "The sick is gone?" she asked hopefully. "The sick is gone," Maria confirmed, and Emma shrieked with joy, launching herself into her mother's arms with such force they both nearly toppled over. "Does this mean we can have a normal life now?" Emma asked. "Like other families?" Maria and Marcus exchanged glances. What was normal for them? They'd been forged in crisis, built a family in hospital waiting rooms and during chemo sessions. Could they translate that into everyday life? "We can have our own kind of normal," Marcus said, ruffling Emma's growing hair. "The kind where we get to decide what our family looks like." Over the next few weeks, life settled into new rhythms. Maria had regained enough strength to start planning her business, Maria's Touch, a cleaning company built on fair wages, comprehensive benefits, and treating workers with dignity. Marcus had been true to his word, providing startup capital and business mentorship while making it clear the company was hers to run. She hired her first 3 employees, all women who'd been in situations similar to her own, working hard, struggling to make ends meet, balancing childcare and bills, and 1,000 daily worries. Offering them real benefits, including health insurance, felt like honoring her own journey. She could so easily have been them, if not for Marcus's intervention. Marcus, meanwhile, had found a new balance at Chin Technologies. He was still CEO, still brilliant at what he did, but he no longer let the company consume his entire life. He left by 6 most days to have dinner with Maria and Emma. He took weekends off unless there was a genuine emergency. His employees noticed the change. He was warmer, more approachable, quicker to praise, and slower to criticize. "Success is still important to me," he told Maria one evening. "But it's not the only thing anymore. I want to build something that lasts, yes, but I also want to be present for the people I love." As summer arrived and Maria's business grew, she broached the subject she'd been avoiding: housing. They still lived in Marcus's penthouse, in the arrangement that had started as temporary. Emma had her room, Maria had hers, and Marcus had his. It worked, but it was also undefined, existing in a liminal space between employer/employee, benefactor/recipient, and something much more intimate. "I've been looking at apartments," Maria said one night after Emma was asleep. They were on the balcony again, their spot for important conversations. "Nothing fancy, but something Emma and I can afford with what the business is generating now." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the city lights. "Is that what you want? To leave?" "I don't know what I want," Maria admitted. "Marcus, we've never really talked about what this is between us. You said we'd take it slow, and we have, but we can't stay in limbo forever." Emma's starting to ask questions about why Uncle Marcus lives with us, why we're a family, but not like other families she sees. "I need to know, what are we doing here?" Marcus turned to face her fully. In the months since they'd met, she'd watched him transform from the cold, isolated man who'd hired her into someone capable of deep feeling and expression. But now she saw vulnerability in his eyes, a fear she recognized. "I'm in love with you," he said simply. "I have been for months, probably since that night Emma asked me to read her father's letter. I'm in love with you and Emma, with the life we've built together, with the family we've become. But I'm terrified that if I ask for more, if I push for something formal and permanent, I'll lose you." Maria's breath caught. "Why would you lose me?" "Because maybe you feel obligated," Marcus said, the words tumbling out. "Maybe you think you owe me something, because I helped during your treatment. Maybe once you're fully established, independent, you'll realize you don't actually want to be tied to me. You could have any life you want now, Maria. Why would you choose this one?" Maria stood, crossing to where he sat. She took his face in her hands, making him look at her. "I choose this life because I love you too, you impossible man. I love the way you learned to braid Emma's hair, even though it took you hours to master it. I love how you still attend every one of my doctor's appointments, even though I'm in remission. I love that you cry during Disney movies and pretend it's allergies. I love that you've become the father Emma never got to have, and you do it with such care and intention that it makes my heart ache." "Maria," his voice broke. "I'm not with you because I owe you," she continued fiercely. "I'm with you because you see me, all of me, not just the grateful cancer patient or the hardworking maid. You see the woman who wants to build a business empire, who has opinions and dreams and a stubborn streak a mile wide. You see me and you love me anyway. How could I not choose that?" Marcus pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "Marry me," he whispered against her hair. "Not someday, not when the timing is perfect, but soon. Marry me and make this official, make Emma legally mine, make us the family we already are in every way that matters." Maria pulled back to look at him, tears streaming down her face. "Are you sure? Marcus, I might always have cancer hanging over me. I might relapse, might need more treatment. There are no guarantees." "There are never guarantees," Marcus said. "I learned that when I lost my father. But I also learned that you don't wait to love people. You don't wait to tell them they matter. You do it now while you can. So yes, I'm sure. I've never been more sure of anything." "Then yes," Maria said, laughing through her tears. "Yes, I'll marry you. Yes to making this family official. Yes to all of it." They kissed then, not their first kiss but their best, a kiss that tasted of tears and laughter and promise. Behind them, unnoticed, Emma stood in the balcony doorway in her pajamas, watching with a knowing smile that suggested she'd understood what was happening long before the adults had. The next morning, they told Emma together over breakfast, Marcus's pancakes, which had improved considerably. "Emma, you know how some families have a mama and papa who are married?" Maria began carefully. "And some families are just a mama or just a papa, and some have two mamas or two papas and all different kinds," Emma recited, echoing what she'd learned in her progressive preschool. "Exactly," Marcus said. "Well, your mama and I want to get married, which means I would officially be your dad, if that's okay with you." Emma looked between them seriously. Would I call you Daddy instead of Uncle Marcus? You could call me whatever feels right, Marcus said. Daddy or Papa or still Uncle Marcus. Whatever you're comfortable with. Emma thought about this, taking a bite of pancake while she considered. Finally, she said, I think Papa Marcus. Because my first Papa is in heaven, and you're my Papa here. Papa Marcus and Mama Maria. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. That's perfect. Can I help plan the wedding? Emma asked eagerly. Can I wear a princess dress? Can we have cake? All of the above, Maria promised, laughing. The wedding planning became a family affair. They decided on a small ceremony in Central Park, the place where they'd taken some of their first family walks. Emma took her duties as flower girl very seriously, practicing walking slowly and solemnly while scattering imaginary petals. Maria invited her few close friends and cousins, some of her employees from the growing business. Marcus invited a small group of colleagues who'd become genuine friends during his transformation, including Richard Ashford, who'd been so understanding during Maria's treatment. The night before the wedding, Maria sat with Emma, helping her try on the flower girl dress for the dozenth time. Mama, Emma said thoughtfully, are you happy? So happy, baby. Why do you ask? Because sometimes when you look at Papa Marcus, you get this look on your face like you might cry but not sad crying. And I just wanted to make sure it was happy. Maria pulled her daughter close. It's very happy. You know what? I think your Papa, your first Papa, would be happy too. He wanted me to find love again, to not be alone. How do you know? Emma asked. Maria thought about Carlos's letter, the one that had started everything that night months ago. She'd read it so many times, she had it memorized. Because he wrote it in his letter. He said, take care of your mama and let her take care of you. And if she finds someone who makes her smile, someone who loves you like I would have, be happy for her. He was very smart, Emma said seriously. Yes, he was. And he had good taste. He fell in love with me after all, Maria teased, tickling Emma until she giggled. Mama Marcus has good taste too, Emma said once. She'd caught her breath. Don't you mean Papa Marcus? No, I mean both. Papa Marcus has good taste because he loves you, and Mama has good taste because she loves him. It's like... Emma struggled for the words. Like a circle, Maria suggested. Everyone loving everyone. Like a triangle, Emma corrected. Remember? Strong like a triangle. That night, as Maria lay in bed unable to sleep from excitement and nerves, there was a soft knock on her door. Marcus stood in the hallway, looking sheepish. I know it's bad luck to see the bride before the wedding, but I couldn't sleep, he admitted. Me neither, Maria said, opening the door wider. They ended up on the balcony again, wrapped in blankets against the cool spring night. Tomorrow they'd make it official, but tonight they were still in the in-between, savoring the last hours of this chapter before starting the next. Do you ever wonder about the what-ifs? Marcus asked. What if Emma hadn't come to my office that night? What if I'd been too wrapped up in work to pay attention? What if you'd been too proud to accept help? All the time, Maria admitted. But then I remember something my grandmother used to say. God writes straight with crooked lines. All the pain, all the struggle, it led us here. I wouldn't change a single thing, because changing anything might mean not having this. Even the cancer? Marcus asked softly. Maria was quiet for a moment. Even the cancer. Because it taught me that I'm stronger than I knew. It taught Emma about courage and resilience. And it brought us you. Not because you saved me, but because the crisis stripped away all our defenses and let us see each other clearly. I like that, Marcus said. Crooked lines leading somewhere beautiful. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city wake up in the pre-dawn light. Soon the day would begin, the flowers, the guests, the ceremony. But for now, there was just this. Two people who'd found each other in the darkness and chosen to walk toward the light together. Tomorrow, Maria Martinez would become Maria Chin. Emma would officially gain the father she'd chosen. And Marcus would complete his transformation from isolated billionaire to beloved husband and father. It had started with a letter and a little girl's desperate plea. It had been written in hospital waiting rooms and chemo chairs, in pancake breakfasts and bedtime stories, in moments of terror and triumph. And now it would continue, written in the everyday moments of a life built on love, chosen family, and the courage to believe in second chances. 5 years later, Marcus sat in his home office, the same room where Emma had first asked him to read her father's letter, preparing to write a letter of his own. Outside, he could hear the sounds of his family. Maria on a business call in the living room, her company now employing 50 people and growing steadily. Emma, now 8, practicing piano with Mrs. Patterson, and upstairs in the nursery, their 18-month-old son Daniel taking his afternoon nap. The family had expanded in unexpected, joyful ways. Maria's remission had held, 5 years cancer-free, with each passing scan bringing more hope that the disease was truly behind them. They decided to adopt a child, feeling their family wasn't quite complete. Daniel had come to them through a local agency, born to a teenage mother who'd made the heartbreaking choice to give him a better life. From the moment they'd held him, red-faced and screaming, he'd been theirs. But today wasn't about Daniel, or even about the life they'd built. Today was about honoring a debt of gratitude to a man Marcus had never met, but whose impact shaped every day of his life. He pulled out fine stationery, the kind reserved for important correspondence, and began to write. Dear Carlos, you don't know me, but I know you through the words you left behind and through the legacy you created in your daughter. My name is Marcus Chen, and I'm married to your Maria. I'm raising your Emma as my own, alongside our son Daniel. I'm writing to you not because I believe you can read this from wherever you are, but because there are things I need to say, and you're the only one who would fully understand. Marcus paused, considering his words carefully. He thought back to that night 5 years ago, when a small child had appeared in his office with a desperate request. That moment had seemed random then, but now he saw it as the hinge on which his entire life had turned. First, I want to tell you about Emma. She's 8 now, brilliant and kind and braver than most adults I know. She has your eyes, Maria tells me that, and your courage. She plays piano and loves science, and has declared she wants to be a doctor who cures cancer. I think you'd be incredibly proud of her. She asks about you sometimes. We read your letter together on important occasions, her birthday, the anniversary of Maria's remission, the day we adopted Daniel. She knows you loved her, that you fought to meet her, that you gave Maria everything you could in the time you had. She carries you with her in the best possible way, not as a burden of grief, but as a foundation of love. Marcus's hand trembled slightly as he continued. This next part was harder. I want you to know that I love Maria with everything I am. I'm not trying to replace you. I could never do that, and I wouldn't want to. You gave her the gift of knowing she was worthy of devoted love. You gave her Emma, which means you gave her a reason to fight when cancer came. Everything good in my life traces back to you in some way. But I also want you to know that I see her as more than the widow you left behind. I see her strength, her business acumen, the way she builds something meaningful with her company. I see the way she loves fiercely and completely, the way she turned her own suffering into empathy for others. You love the woman she was, and I love the woman she's become. Both versions are amazing. He thought about Maria downstairs, probably negotiating a contract with her characteristic mix of warmth and steel. She'd built her business into something remarkable, providing good jobs to women who needed them. Last year, she'd been featured in a Forbes article about female entrepreneurs. Marcus had that article framed in his office, not because of the recognition, but because it represented how far she'd come. I want to tell you about the night Emma came to me with your letter. I was a different person then, successful but empty, wealthy but alone. I'd convinced myself that emotional distance was strength, that not caring was safer than risking loss. I was wrong about everything that mattered. Emma asked me to read your letter, and in those words, you taught me what I'd been missing. You taught me that life's value isn't measured in years, but in love. That 3 days with someone you adore is worth more than a lifetime of hollow achievement. That legacy isn't what you build, but who you love and how you love them. Your letter saved me, Carlos. It saved me before I even knew I needed saving. It opened my heart just enough to let Maria and Emma in, and they've done the rest, teaching me how to be fully human again, how to love without reservation, how to be present for the people who matter. Marcus glanced at the photo on his desk, their wedding day in Central Park, Emma between them in her princess dress, all three of them laughing at something Richard had said. It was his favorite picture, capturing the joy of that perfect day. Maria kept her promise to you. She took care of Emma, raised her with love and wisdom. She let Emma know her father, kept your memory alive in the healthiest possible way. And when Emma needed someone to read your letter, Maria had taught her daughter to be brave enough to ask for help from a stranger. I hope you don't mind that I've taken your place at bedtime stories and soccer games, at parent-teacher conferences and piano recitals. I'm doing my best to be the father you would have been. Sometimes I worry I'm not enough, that Emma deserves more. But then I remember that you chose Maria, and Maria chose me, and Emma chose to call me Papa. If the three of you believe I'm capable of this, then I'll keep trying to prove you right. He wiped his eyes, surprised to find himself crying. Over the years, crying had become easier, another gift from his family. He no longer saw tears as weakness, but as proof of connection, of caring deeply enough to let things affect him. I want you to know that Maria found happiness again. She laughs every day, builds dreams into reality, loves our children with the same devotion she had for you. She still misses you. She'll tell you that herself if you ask, but the missing doesn't consume her anymore. It's just part of who she is, woven into her story, but not defining it. And Emma, Carlos, Emma is thriving. She has friends and hobbies and a little brother she adores, even when she pretends he's annoying. She gets to be a kid, to dream big dreams, to feel safe and loved. You gave her life, and Maria gave her love, and I'm trying to give her everything else. Stability, opportunity, the freedom to become whoever she wants to be. Marcus thought about last week, when Emma had won her school science fair with a project about cancer cells. She'd explained the research with such clarity and passion, and afterward had told him, I'm going to find a cure, Papa Marcus, so what happened to Mama never happens to anyone else. Our son Daniel is 18 months old now. He has no biological connection to you, but in a way, he's part of your legacy too. If you hadn't written that letter, if Emma hadn't been brave enough to bring it to me, if Maria hadn't fought her way back to health, none of this would exist. Daniel wouldn't be here, wouldn't have this family, wouldn't have the future we're building for him. I'm teaching both kids about you. Daniel is too young to understand yet, but Emma tells him stories. How her first papa loved her mama so much he fought to meet Emma even when he was very sick. How brave her first papa was. How he wrote her a letter that changed everything. Marcus paused, considering how to say the next part. It felt presumptuous, but also necessary. I need to thank you for something you couldn't have known you were doing. When you wrote that letter, when you told Maria to find happiness again, when you gave Emma permission to love whoever loves her mama, you gave me permission too. Permission to step into this role, to love your family, to become part of their story. Without those words, I think Maria might have felt guilty about moving on. I know she struggled with it at first, worried about betraying your memory. But your letter made it clear. You wanted her to live, to love, to be happy. You released her from grief's prison, even as you were facing your own death. That's the most profound act of love I can imagine. So thank you, Carlos. Thank you for loving Maria so well that she knew what real love looked like and could recognize it again. Thank you for fighting to meet Emma, giving her those 3 precious days that she carries like treasures. Thank you for the letter that a little girl clutched in her hands one night, desperate to hear her papa's voice through someone else's reading. Thank you for your courage, your sacrifice, your wisdom. Thank you for the crooked line that led to my straight path. He signed the letter simply, Marcus Chen, Papa Marcus. That evening, when the family gathered for dinner, Marcus's cooking had improved considerably over the years. Though Maria still teased him about his early attempts, Emma noticed the envelope on her papa's desk. "What's that?" she asked, pointing. "A letter I wrote," Marcus said. "To your first papa, to tell him about our family and thank him for his letter to you." Emma's eyes widened. "Can I read it?" Marcus glanced at Maria, who nodded with shining eyes. "Of course." They read it together after dinner, Emma sitting on Marcus's lap, while Maria held Daniel, the 4 of them curled together on the couch. Emma cried in places, smiled in others, and when it was finished, she wrapped her arms around Marcus's neck. "He would like you, Papa Marcus," she said with certainty. "You're both really good at writing letters that matter." That night, after the children were in bed, Marcus and Maria stood on their balcony. Some traditions never changed. The city glittered below them, full of millions of stories, millions of lives intersecting and diverging in patterns too complex to predict. "Your letter to Carlos was beautiful," Maria said softly. "Thank you for honoring him that way." "He deserves to be honored," Marcus said. "He made you who you are, and who you are made me who I am. We're all connected, all part of the same story." Maria leaned her head against his shoulder. "I never imagined this life. When I was sick, when I was scared, when I was just trying to survive, I couldn't have dreamed something this beautiful was possible." "Me neither," Marcus admitted. 5 years ago, I thought happiness was closing a deal or seeing my stock price rise. I didn't know it was pancakes with a 4-year-old or business strategy sessions with the woman I love, or watching our son take his first steps. I didn't know it was this. They stood in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from years of knowing each other deeply. Below them, the city hummed with life. People falling in love, people grieving, people fighting battles both seen and unseen. Somewhere out there, someone might be holding a letter that would change their life, just as Emma had held her father's letter that night 5 years ago. "Do you think Emma will want to read Carlos's letter to our grandchildren someday?" Maria mused. Marcus smiled at the thought. "Probably. And she'll tell them about the night she asked a grumpy billionaire to read it to her, and how that one brave act changed everything." "You weren't grumpy," Maria protested. "Well, maybe a little." "I was very grumpy," Marcus corrected. "Isolated, unhappy, going through the motions of living without actually feeling alive. Emma and you saved me from that." "No," Maria said firmly. "You saved yourself. Emma and I just gave you a reason. You chose to open your heart. You chose to help, to care, to love. That was all you." But Marcus knew better. Choice and circumstance were always tangled together, impossible to separate. Yes, he'd made choices to help Maria, to open his home, to let down his walls. But he'd only been able to make those choices because a desperate little girl had appeared in his office at exactly the right moment, holding exactly the right letter, asking exactly the right question. Sometimes grace arrives disguised as crisis. Sometimes love grows in the cracks broken hearts leave behind. Sometimes the most valuable things in life come not from careful planning, but from being open to unexpected possibilities. "We should put both letters somewhere safe," Marcus said. "Carlos's original and the one I wrote to him. When Emma's older, when she has her own children, she'll want them." "Yes," Maria agreed. "The letters that built our family." As they headed inside, Marcus took one last look at the city. Somewhere out there, someone was suffering. Someone was grieving. Someone was making impossible choices between pride and survival, between fear and hope. And maybe, just maybe, somewhere a child was gathering courage to ask a stranger for help. A letter was waiting to be read. A heart was ready to crack open. Because that's how healing happens, not in grand gestures, but in small acts of bravery. A toddler asking for help. A dying man writing words of love. A woman fighting for one more day with her child. A billionaire choosing connection over isolation. These were the real miracles, not the absence of pain, but the presence of love within it. Not the avoidance of loss, but the courage to care despite it. Not the guarantee of happy endings, but the choice to hope for them anyway. Inside, Emma's voice drifted down from her room. "Good night, Papa Marcus."
"Good night, Mama."
"I love you to the moon and back." "We love you too, mi Estrelita," Maria called back. "Our little star." Marcus squeezed Maria's hand. 5 years ago, he'd been standing in that office, alone with his accomplishments and empty of joy. Now he was here, surrounded by the messy, beautiful, terrifying, wonderful reality of love. All because a little girl had asked, "Can you read this letter for me? It's very important." She'd been right. It was important, more important than either of them could have known. Important enough to shatter a billionaire's soul and rebuild it into something better. Important enough to create a family from fragments. Important enough to prove that sometimes the most profound transformations begin with the smallest acts of courage. Important enough to change everything. And in heaven, or whatever lies beyond, perhaps Carlos smiled. His letter had done exactly what he'd hoped. It had kept his memory alive, had helped his daughter feel his love, had given his Maria permission to live again. But more than that, it had created ripples he could never have predicted. It had saved a man from emotional death.
It had built a family.
It had taught lessons about love and courage and the unexpected ways grace arrives. 3 days with his daughter. 1 letter. 5 years later, a life transformed. Sometimes that's all it takes. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes crooked lines really do lead somewhere beautiful. And sometimes the most important thing you can do is simply be brave enough to ask someone to read you a letter.
The end.